Do you think something is missing from your August garden? Or do you think you need something to brighten it up? Well, stay tuned for my 3 favorite perennials that you can add now to your garden, and that will get you some beautiful color right through the fall. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Down the Garden Path. Thank you for joining me here today. I want to talk to you about some of my favorite there's a lot of favorites, believe me. I want to talk to you about 3 of my favorite perennials for sun that you could plant now and enjoy for the rest of the season. But the one common denominator in all 3 of them is all 3 are white. Yes, white really adds some great contrast in your garden. It looks good at night. You can often, if you don't have lighting in your garden and you're sitting in your deck or your patio, you will notice, as dusk comes or even from the house as it darkens, you will notice the white. You will see the white flowers. So I think they're a great addition and often overlooked in the garden. I know my passion for hydrangeas and most of the hydrangeas are white. And so, those can be seen. That's another reason why I like planting hydrangeas as shrubs in the garden. But white annuals are often used in hanging baskets for that very reason. But I don't know that we transition that to white perennials. So I think they make a great addition. And I love that they bloom end of July, August, and September, kind of when a lot of our spring, June favorites have kind of petered off. So let me introduce you to the first, which actually needs no introduction because you're all very familiar, I'm sure, with phlox, tall phlox and garden phlox. But the white, one of the things about phlox, garden phlox, is that it often has a bad reputation of having mildew, and especially the white one. But David is it's not new anymore, but it's been around a while, and it is a beautiful white tall phlox. So it's the tallest of the 3 I'm going to talk about today. It'll get 3 to 4 feet, does not need staking. Let me repeat that. It does not need staking. So that is wonderful. And it is just a really lovely height in the garden, as well as full as it matures. Mine has gotten a little wider and probably about 4 years or so. So it's almost shrub-like in the sense that it's nice and big and wide, and it really pops in the garden. And I really recommend it. Phlox will go from full sun to part shade, so it'll tolerate a little bit of shade. It does like well-drained soil, so it does like to be kept moist. So it's not something I would call a perennial, I would call drought tolerant. It does need to have water, but not too much water too. So there's that balance there. And it grows in zones 3 to 8. And I just think it's taller than many of the other perennials that are blooming in my garden right now, but not as tall as, well, I guess it's not near my hydrangeas. So I have it near some evergreens. So that also makes it pop. And if it's around other shrubs that you have that maybe have finished blooming, it's a great way to add some pop in those spots. We have lots of things like I think of like a peony. A peony, when it's blooming in the spring, the foliage is lovely when it's done blooming. So the phlox would just be starting to grow. And then later in the season, like now, it can surpass and be taller than the peony, but it's not hiding. The peony's not blooming, so it doesn't matter. It's a great thing to come up in its place and add something to the garden. And who doesn't love white peonies? But this is not a peony episode. So that's something I want you to look for if you have a spot in your garden where you might need a little bit of a height. You might want a little bit of impact from mid-season till later in the season. And I really encourage you to look for a white phlox and look for David, which is much more mildew resistant. I have a couple of pink and light pink, dark pink and light pink phlox as well, but I find David stands taller and a little bit more majestic. And again, I really feel like white is often overlooked for perennials, but yet they have a really big impact. Second one that I want to talk to, you may also know, it's kind of an old-fashioned flower. Think of a Veronica or a Speedwell. And I've never really used them as a landscape designer, but this new series has come out and I've tried a few of them. And I think out of all of them, the white Wands Veronica, like I said, also known as speedwell, really stands out. It is only about 14 to 16 inches tall. So it's kind of nice. It's not a ground cover, but it's not super tall either. And they do kind of form a nice clump. So they get 16 to 20 inches, 24 inches wide over time. And they're spiky white flowers. So they're stalks and they have white flowers all along their spike and they're pretty showy. So it's a pretty, good sized flower and it really blooms a long time. I know another friend and I were saying, wow, other things have kind of come and gone and the white wands is still blooming. It it does, and you can extend the blooms by doing a little bit of deadheading as well. So if you are out there and you see a couple stalks that have no flowers on them anymore, doing some deadheading, you can possibly really increase that flowering season. And again, even in the low shape, and again, I go back to the peony, this is another thing that, peonies, as great as they are in the garden, they do leave a hole later in the season, but they do have lovely dark green foliage too. So I think it's a good place where you could put white flowers in front of that grow up later in the season to take advantage of that spot. And there's many others like evergreens, this would look great. Even if you had a yew hedge, if you wanted to do something a bit more modern and kind of have a linear yew hedge and then a linear row of white wands and then have a linear, low perennial, whether it's something like Roseanne that, we know spreads well and kind of fills the space, perennial geranium or Max Fry perennial geranium that stays low and is a bit more mounding. So it's kind of a contrasting, in a linear fashion. They also are good pollinators and, I think just based on the way their flower stalk is formed. And these lovely little guys grow in zones 4 to 8. And I know you won't be disappointed. They do have cousins that are pink and purple, but so you can look into those as well if you are not on my side as far as white goes. But I really think as the season starts to wind down, and go for a walk maybe at dusk and see if you see white flowers in other people's gardens. I think you will really see that it's a great time of year to add white to your garden. And lastly, I have one more, and you may not have heard of it. It's not newer to me. I've been using it for a few years, and the clients it's probably the number one plant that I get contacted. I put it in the spring, and it doesn't look like much. And I'm going to say it's if I look for my notes here, it is in the mint family, which I know may shock you and scare you a little bit, but it's Calamintha nepeta. And so it's sometimes called lesser catmint. And you know how much I love my purple catmint. And I really do. The Persian catmint is one of my favorites, and I really, really like it. But this one is it's taller. It's taller than the regular catmint. It doesn't really look like it because it is much more upright. I'd say it's a low perennial that's bushy with tiny, tiny flowers, so much smaller than the Veronica, the flowers, but the stem is really overloaded with flowers. And like I said, it is in the mint family technically, which means the foliage is fragrant. So if you crush it or brush up against it, it will smell a little minty. And as anybody who has a deer or rabbit problem, you will discover that they don't like scented foliage. So if you have rabbit issues or deer issues, this is a great plant for you because they don't like to eat anything that is strongly scented, which is why they usually stay away from even catmint because it does have a stronger, not necessarily mint scent, but a stronger scent to it. And I do want to reassure you, it does not spread like mint does in the garden. It's definitely clumped formed. It's a little bit lower than Veronica, but not by much. And it is a pollinator magnet. So it kind of grows, it comes up from nothing in the early season, and then it kind of just slowly starts appearing in your garden. And then you really notice it all of a sudden at this time of year. At the beginning of August, you're like, wow, what is that? And I love where Veronica kind of stands up and white phlox also, really kind of stand upright, even though they're two different heights. Calamintha is a bit more rounded and more clumped form, and it just kind of cascades a little bit, not falls like a creeping phlox or any of the creeping perennials, but it looks great up against rocks. It looks great up against grouped together or amongst other perennials as well. I think of it, it's not quite as cascadey as, I'd say, the Japanese forest grass can be, but that idea where it kind of is a softer look to a corner of your garden or along the edges. It really, if you need to soften up a hard corner or a hard spot, Calamintha, nepeta is a great option. And the flowers are lovely, but I cannot tell you how, and you probably Google it and people have posted videos. The tiny, tiny little black native bees love it. And I know it's not necessarily a native plant, but they still love it. And it has a very long blooming time as well. So it will start blooming, the end of July into August. It is upright. So as much as I say it's cascading, it will not fall over in a hard rain. It will not be floppy, in a windy day, anything like that. So I will have some photos at the end if you want to tune into my YouTube channel. I'll post some pictures of these guys on the YouTube channel if you want to listen to the podcast there, and you get a really good idea. All three are in my garden, and so some of those pictures might be from that. But I just wanted to reinvigorate everybody to know that it's not too late to purchase plants in your August garden. If the garden centers don't have them, you can ask them to bring them in. They're still ordering plants. They're ordering plants from the grower. So just because you don't see it on the benches does not mean it's not available. Find a manager, perennial manager, store manager, and ask about ordering in a perennial for you. Or if you have a landscape professional in your life, whether it's a designer or contractor, you can ask them, because we order also from nurseries and growers that are wholesale nurseries and growers that are still, farming and tending to these plants. They're cuttings, and they plant new ones, midway through the season to get us through the season. So don't worry, you do not have to rely on, the plants that have been kind of sad and lonely on those garden center benches. You can get fresh perennials this time of year. So there, I leave you with some thoughts for adding some color in the shade of white to your August garden. And honestly into September. And I promise you will love it. So those are three. So to recap, white Wands Veronica, Calamintha, nepeta, and David white tall phlox, paniculata phlox, not the creeping phlox. You want the tall phlox. So those are three great choices of perennials that you can add now to your August garden and enjoy for the rest of the season, I promise. And you will really look forward to them coming back next season as well. So thank you. Tune in next week where I'm going to talk about some shade perennials that are definitely a great add to your garden as well. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.